We are live. Here we go.
We are live. The Hunt for Success, number 39. Is that right, Ryan?
That's right.
Ryan McCracken and Cody Steinman. Today, we're here with Katey Dallosto. Lost
Very
in the
good.
middle.
Very good.
Thanks for coming on. Came up from San Francisco. Is that
Yep.
right?
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Author of Fortune Cookie Leadership. Capiche Consulting.
Mm-hmm. You have to do the hand gesture when you say capiche. There you go.
Capiche.
All right.
And that's your company,
Mm-hmm.
consulting company. And then you're also HomeBot,
I'm also HomeBot. Yes.
which you wore the T-shirt, which is great. And HomeBot is a
HomeBot is a financial dashboard that's customized for each of your clients. So if you think about home as your largest financial investment, right? We in the real estate business say, while they're going through the drudgery of buying a house, is the largest financial investment of your life, is the largest financial investment of your life. That's why you go through all this. And then we hand them over the keys and we go, okay, well, good luck to you, right? And then we get mad at them for going online and searching for other tools to help them with their largest financial investment. HomeBot actually brings it back to the loan officer, to the real estate professional, and says, here, we're going to create a financial dashboard, basically a monthly statement on your largest financial investment with value, equity, and options you can do to leverage that equity that you've built up, and really stop sitting on your money and doing something with that important financial investment. It's a really, really cool tool to stay in contact with your clients and remind people why they need you.
I think right now is such a cool time to be an entrepreneur for everybody, but what a cool time to be a mortgage loan officer, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you either are new in the industry, which is harder to get into now than ever, or if you survived the crash and did all that, there are so many cool pieces of software to really help automate your business and take your service to the next level. But it's really like the wild, wild west. There's so many startups in the mortgage industry. So kind of tell us a little bit about how HomeBot came to be and kind of that risk of starting a mortgage tech company.
Right. So the CEO of HomeBot is Ernie Graham, and Ernie is a engineer by trade, but actually at one point in his life got into real estate and was a realtor in Telluride. I was trying to say realtor and Telluride at the same time. He was a realtor in Telluride, Colorado for about 10 years, owned his own brokerage, was very active and involved in the community, and saw the need for something to really help connect and empower homeowners. I think we all know when we meet with clients, whether they're buying their next home, buying an investment home, buying their first home, that there's a huge education process of how does this all work, and that everybody intellectually knows this is the largest financial investment of your life, but what does that mean? How does that work? And then again, we don't really help them after the close, right? After we hand over the keys, it's like, okay. So Ernie and his business partners put together this idea of what if we sent somebody a statement in the same way that you get a statement on your other financial investments. I mean, we get more information on our -2 savings account, that we know is losing money, right? Than we do on the largest financial investment of our life. So HomeBot came around. It's been in business for about 3 years, about 2 years in the marketplace. Really launched in Denver. We're nationwide. We have some really great national agreements with some mortgage companies, and a lot of top producing loan officers are the ones that are really using it, and a lot of top producing realtors are using it as well. I see it as the answer to how's the market, right?
Yeah.
So when people say how's the market, nobody cares. Like, do you really care about the market? There's usually an address that's important to you. Mm-hmm. And HomeBot then gives them that information about their specific address. And we say, look, this is a person who is going to help you make good decisions. One of the things when I coach loan officers and real estate agents is I said, our job is to make friends and then to help our friends make money and make good decisions, right? So you can't help someone make good decisions unless they're educated, right? So you've got to give them that information. And HomeBot really, really bridges that gap.
Well, and it seems like both with real estate agents and with loan officers, managing their database always comes as a last priority.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always the last thing they manage. It's a daunting task, and there's not that immediate sales activity results that come from it. So being able to have a piece of software to do that, I mean, it was a no-brainer. For us, we got our marketing gals working on getting that set up on it, and it's something in my business that I've always wanted to do a better job of. And it's easy to say, okay, well, I'll call each of my clients every year and I'll review their file. Well, I mean, that could be thousands of people.
Right.
And that could be a full-time job just on its own.
Correct. And a lot of times people don't know what to say. Like I get that. That's the question I probably get the most from both real estate agents and loan officers is, what do I say? Like, I know I'm supposed to do this annual mortgage review, and I know that, Todd Duncan talks about it at Sales Mastery. Do your annual mortgage review.
You know what is the most embarrassing question that I have to ask sometimes when I talk to a past client is, what interest rate did we get you? Right? Because shouldn't I know that? I did their loan. It should be right in my database. But when I'm on the phone with a client and maybe I haven't talked to them in a couple years and I have to go find their file, and I always hate asking that question because I should know that before they should know it, right?
Right.
So
it's interesting also, I think it's when we're doing these annual mortgage reviews, or we tell real estate agents to call their database a couple times a year, it sometimes feels like this really awkward conversation. Like, yeah, I told you last year I'm not doing anything for 10 years because of where my kids are, where I am in my life, or my career, or what have you, or just starting a new business. And so you call and it's like, hey. And it kind of feels a little like, what am I supposed to say? I'm doing your annual mortgage review. Yeah, I told you a year ago that I'm starting a business. I'm not. Okay, but I'm doing my annual mortgage review. But it's like with HomeBot, it's like, hey, I see that you've opened your HomeBot and I see you've been looking at it. Let's talk about, let's take 10 minutes and review everything that's on HomeBot. See if there's anything that can help you with whatever your business, your kids, your whatever you've got going on in your life. Maybe there's some things we can do to improve your equity position to help you move forward, or to make a plan to get you there. And I think that's what I love about HomeBot. I mean, there's a 70% open rate. Like, so 70% of the people that are getting your HomeBot digest are looking at it. They're at least curious about it enough. And that's like, okay, now am I curious enough to ask a question? But if you're calling your past clients and saying, hey, do you know, let's take a look at this. Do you know you have these options? And, oh, do you know anybody else that might want to get a HomeBot? Okay, now we just doubled the size of our database. If every single person gives you one name and you get them a HomeBot, now they're getting this information from you. It's really, really powerful.
So let's switch gears a little bit. I loved before the podcast, we were talking about how to speak to real estate agents. And that's is that how you got into consulting?
Yeah, a little bit. I've been doing public speaking and national speaking for about 10 years. I was a national trainer with Keller Williams. So I was a branch manager for Keller Williams and Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. I spoke with Gary Keller and was a national trainer with him. And I fell in love with the stage and the microphone. So I really like working with teams. I like large groups. I've done speaking at various associations of realtors. I was a speaker at the Next Home conference this year. And then I got involved when I was working for a mortgage company. So I worked for Prospect Mortgage that was acquired by Homebridge, and worked with them for 6 years and really helped them with that how to speak realtor, helping to manage in-house relationships, and then doing a lot of business development work for the West Coast, essentially. And yeah, the how to speak realtor thing is a really interesting concept because the loan officers, mostly, not all, but most loan officers see that like, I'm here to help my client. And not that it becomes transactional because they build these really great relationships, but what it does is it's like get so entrenched in helping this client through this transaction that we sometimes can get away from working with the realtor and helping them. I said my expertise is really on in-house relationships. And so one of the things I teach about working with in-house relationships, if you have a desk rental, if you're sitting inside of a real estate office and you're just there inconsistently, then that's how the agents may perceive you, as being inconsistent. I said the number one thing, and we talked about this a little before, is to become friends with the branch manager. And not just friends, but best friends, so that you are an integral part of the staff, that you're an integral part of the vision of the office, that you're helping the branch manager achieve their goals, and that you're there to help answer questions for all of the loans, whether or not you did it yourself, that you're here to help the office be successful and answer questions about mortgages, regardless of if you are doing the loan or not.
Yeah, it just seems like that is such a opportunity for all entrepreneurs, because there's no training out there that teaches you how to talk to your referral partners, not just in our industry, but in any industry. Right? You go to, my wife's in the assisted living industry.
Okay, wow.
And so I go to a lot of those banquets and networking events, and I get to be the trophy husband.
I'm sure you do it well.
But it's fun to sit back and watch a room in a different industry of people networking. And there's definitely a big variety of skill sets that people have. And you can tell people lack that ability so much that they have to drink 4 or 5 drinks to be able to go talk to people and introduce themselves to the people that are going to refer them business. You know, in the assisted living industry, it's the referral partners for the assisted living facilities are the hospitals, right? So it's just like the real estate agents and the loan officers. And the really good assisted living facilities will have people in the hospital all day. The hospital is their office, just like what you were describing with a mortgage loan officer in a real estate office. So yeah, I mean, if you are struggling as an entrepreneur with learning how to talk to your referral partners, what's some good go-to training? Where do you go for help with that?
So I can give a couple ideas. That's a great question but now you're making me think I need to like write something out for how to do that. I'm like, wait, this is going to be a whole new department of Capiche Consulting is how to speak to your referral partners. But I think there's some basic sales 101 with what you're talking about. And a lot of people, if I'm salesy, I come across like a used car salesman. Well, I've been in sales my whole life. I went to Catholic school, so you learn to sell in the first grade, right? So I was the candy bar salesperson, pizza sales, wheel-a-thon, you name it. So I had a natural inclination for sales, but then I was in corporate sales for 15 years before getting into real estate, which is sort of how I fell into training because it was like nobody knew some of the basics.
What type of corporate sales?
So I sold for ADP, which is a payroll service company.
Yep.
And I also sold pharmaceutical sales. I sold copiers in Honolulu. That's when I knew I could sell anything. I couldn't pronounce the street names. And I was like, sure, yeah, I'll be over there. No idea how to even pronounce the street names. And that's when I was like, okay, if I can do this, I can sell anything. But it's the same process. And there's some old school Tommy Hopkins kind of stuff that you can use in networking. And the first thing in any sort of relationship is trust, right? The foundation of every relationship is trust, professional, personal. And in order to build trust, you have to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Because you just brought up a really good point. For us, when we are prospecting or we're talking with potential home buyers, the goal is to build that trust in a very short amount of time, like 60 seconds or less on that first phone call. You got to build their trust. It's hard to switch gears when you start to go to your referral partners because you're not trying to build that trust in 60 seconds. If you do, you just lost the trust.
Right.
It takes a long period of time. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah, the traditional selling, and actually it's in my book too, is the 5 steps of a sales presentation. And the first step is build rapport. And there's an acronym FORD, right, that you can use. And it's by the way, it's a great cocktail party thing too. You don't need the 4 drinks. You can just go, okay, FORD. So it's family, occupation, recreation, dreams. So family, friends, like, where'd you grow up? Tell me about your family. Kids, like what in assisted living, there's all sorts of things you can ask around family with that.
Sure.
And then occupation, what do you do? Right? How'd you get into that field? Right? You're just asking questions. A recreation, what do you do to play? And what's your dream? And so it's, if you had $1 million coming in every year, what would you do? What would you do with your day? Right? If you somehow won the lottery and $1 million is coming in every year, how do you spend your day? Right? That's a great question for getting people to talk about their dreams. What would they do with their time? And so it's a really interesting dynamic on using the acronym of FORD to build rapport. And the thing that most people forget is the listening part. So, because they're so excited about, okay, now that we're building this relationship and I can't wait to talk to you about all the things we can do and my company can help you. And it's the best salespeople are the best listeners. And so I sometimes write on a piece of paper when I'm in a meeting with somebody, I write the acronym WAIT, which is why am I talking? Because I'm a talker. So it's something to remind me of slow down, listen to their answers. Because if somebody's sharing their dreams with you, that's some vulnerability, right? And then it's opportunity for you to share yours. Like, wow, that's really cool. Like, hey, maybe there's some commonalities in your dreams or the recreation or whatever. So it's an opportunity to connect with people at that level. So the first step is building rapport. The second part is what you call the needs analysis. And again, this is something you can do casually at a cocktail party kind of thing, but you can also do it if you're sitting down for a loan officer, sitting down with a real estate agent is, all right, hey, let's talk about your business, right? Kind of sort of circle from, the occupation piece to, hey, this is how you got into real estate. So what's working for you? What do you love? what's the thing that, if that just drives you crazy, or things that you need to get done but are kind of sitting at the bottom of your to-do list because you don't love it, right? And those, the things that you go home at night and feel guilty. Oh, I meant to do this and I didn't get to that. My favorite question to ask, and this is for any referral opportunity, is the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand and could change 3 things about your business, what would they be?
Well, that's a good one.
That's my favorite. And the part is then, shut up.
So what are some common answers there? Do you find that usually that you get the same answer?
Well, it's interesting because I started teaching that to loan officers, to ask realtors that. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to know how to, and I go, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to solve them. I can almost guarantee you that one of those 3 answers, or one of those 3 magic wand wishes, you'll be able to solve. And they just don't know that you can do that. They don't know either that you have the skill set, or you have a network, or that your company has that particular tool that you can do. And it's like, yeah, that's what okay, I can grant wishes. Like, I just became the genie, right? So I can now grant your wishes, especially the Aladdin out right now. It's kind of, you can do lots of fun with the genie kind of thing.
We just saw that.
Did you?
Yeah, we saw it too.
And?
It was excellent.
Okay, I can't wait.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop you in your 5 steps here, because we've covered the first 2. Obviously, the best way to make this come across naturally and organically is practice. So what are some tips? Do you have any tips to help people get comfortable with that? Because I know when I started using Ford and some of these other tricks, it was literally, I felt like I was reading off a piece of paper. In fact, we did Todd Duncan's High Trust Sales Academy, and we went through the whole book. And there's the high trust interview where we had to sit and role play with other people in the class. And then I came back and we had accountability partners, and I had to go do this high trust interview with people. And so I started with an agent that I already had a relationship with. And I go, can I just read these questions to you? And it sounded awful. It was like I was nervous and I'm reading off these silly questions. So how do you get to the point where you can start to integrate those questions in an organic conversation?
And there's nothing wrong with having a piece of paper with some questions on it. Just to be honest and just say, hey, I want to make sure that I ask you some very specific questions about your business. So I'm going to take some notes. And I've got these questions written out to remind myself, because I want that your time is valuable. Like anything that sends a positive message, right? That there are specific questions that I need to make sure to ask you so I can properly advise you on how me or my team or my company can help you achieve your goals, right? Like, that's a compliment, right? Versus like, oh, I'm just going to be a gunslinger and we're just going to figure it out. So having some level of preparation, I think, is important. And it's okay to have it be a little scripted, to say, these are questions I got to make sure I answer that for you. That's a positive. And the thing about when you have an accountability partner, or when you have a role play partner, they know what you're supposed to say. Those are always harder than the people that don't know what you're supposed to say. They don't know if you said it wrong or if you asked the questions out of order. They don't know. But your role play partner is good. I mean, my son's a baseball player. I coached my son Little League, and nobody walks up to the plate for the first time to see a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, right? You have batting practice. You have coaches. You have people observing you from a different point of view, and it's just valuable to have someone listen to you. And sometimes it's good. I think Todd has done this in some of his high trust academies. Is it's a 3, right? So you've got the role play interaction, and then you've got a third person observing. And so that can be really good too, because none of us can see the forest from the trees, right? We need some level of perspective. So I think it's important, even if you say, look, we're going to role play for 15 minutes in the morning just to start our day with building some confidence.
What I love too about those first 2 steps is people should be doing that with everybody, right? We talk about this all the time on the podcast, but it seems like society's gotten to the point where if you go to a restaurant or a coffee shop or a bar and you just sit and eavesdrop on people, it's just 2 people talking about themselves to each other. And there's not much of a conversation going on there. And so I think that Ford, you should be asking all your friends and family, not just people you want to do business with. And it's amazing what that could do to just your relationships, just stopping and listening to people. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do when you're on the podcast to listen to somebody else instead of your own thoughts, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, great questions are a way to reveal things about people they might not have thought of before. And so again, if you have your 3 little questions okay, these are my 3 questions that I always ask everybody. So everybody knows that I ask the magic wand question to everyone, and because it's fun. Those are really interesting answers that people say. So it's a fun one for me. But it's, if that feels awkward for you or it's not your style, that's okay. But pick whatever thing is your style so that you can ask whatever those questions that are going to connect with you at that level.
But the magic wand question, it's a very strategic question, right? So you could phrase it different ways. Jeremy Forcier.
Yeah, I know Jeremy. Yeah.
He's got a similar script, and he makes a big joke out of it. But I think that question is definitely important, no matter what industry you're in. Is if you could change one thing, or what about your current relationships? Is that do you enter a danger zone when you start talking about, if you rephrase that magic wand question of what are you unhappy with your current referral partners?
Well, I mean, I think you could almost phrase it differently of not what you're unhappy with. If you had a magic wand and had the ideal referral partner, what would that look like? Right? What are the 3 things that would be the most important things in a referral partner? And then it's, do you currently have that? Right? And if they do, it's like, awesome. Can I be your backup? Like, can I meet that person? Like, I need them to be my new best friend. Because one of the things that I found really interesting when I moved from the real estate side into the mortgage side was that how much you guys refer business to each other. Like, hey, our company can't do this, or this is kind of a weird one. We're going to send this down to, John down the street. And it's like how much you guys do that. And it's like, that's really cool. So building those relationships, I think a lot of realtors don't know that you guys do that.
Yeah, and there's no commission when you do that.
No, right.
An agent can refer a deal to another state and they get 0.25% or whatever.
Correct.
But when I refer a manufacturer, a certain type of loan to a credit union, I don't get a commission on that.
But you guys are all friends, right? And you pass stuff back and forth, and hey, you can help this guy or this family or what have you. And so I think that's pretty cool. And so I think as soon as I tell realtors that, like, you guys know that they all refer business to each other. Like, they do. Like, most realtors don't know that. And so you asking about who about their current referral partner, it's like, hey, I'm always looking for great people to network with and connect with because we share business all the time. And if you got somebody that's a rock star that you're working with, I want to hang with rock stars. Like, that's the fly with eagles, right? So I want to hang out with those people.
So you're doing really good, because I'm totally sidetracking you every time you get to a step. So I think we're on step 3, right?
Ryan has the best facial expressions.
Yeah. I got nothing today so far.
Suddenly it's just gonna go. Like, I see the wheels are spinning. So yeah, it said the 2 most important steps are the first 2, right? So if you don't build trust, it doesn't really matter, and it's hard to ask somebody detailed questions about their business if you don't have some level of a connection. I've had bad meetings where it's like, well, that was 20 minutes. Okay, thanks so much, right? And other times where you spend 20 minutes just on the rapport piece, where they're just talking and connecting and whatever's going on with them in their lives, and they happen to be willing to share, and it's pretty cool. And then the needs analysis is a huge chunk. So the most time you're going to spend is the rapport building and needs analysis, because at that point, if they've said their 3 wishes for their magic wand, and you're like, we can do 2 of those. Like, or I actually know a guy who does exactly what you're looking for. I mean, that's the other thing that I think we forget, is that because of our job, I said our job is to go make friends. We have lots of friends. So sometimes somebody will say something that you can't do, but you know a guy. I know a guy like that. You're looking for the best painter ever. I got somebody. You're looking for looking for a cool place to do a company event. I know a guy, right? Yeah. So it's sometimes the things that people, he's not gonna, this is my magic wand, but you can't help me. And you're like, well, actually I can. They don't think it's related to what you can do, and they, this is your lane, but you have connections, you have resources that you can help them with. And so that the 3rd step is a presentation, where you're presenting solutions. And sometimes it's going to be purely around what you can do as their referral partner. Sometimes it's around follow-up. I think the funniest one I hear is listing agents that say, well, you know what, I can never follow up with all my buyers. Like, that's something I don't follow up with them. I can't keep track of them. And the loan officer's like, I'll do it, right? I'll help you with that. I got you, right? And then I'll keep track of them for you. And then when they're ready, I'll either give them back to you, or you can refer it out to another agent in your office, and they'll pay you a referral fee. Does that work? Right? Like, and I hear that. That's the one that I hear the most from a realtor perspective, and that a lot of times I hear loan officers that say, oh, I don't want to work with that agent because they're a listing agent. And I was like, those are the best, because they've got leads coming at them so fast that they literally don't have time to follow up, and they won't, because they're like, that's a buyer. I don't have that time or the energy to follow up with that buyer, make sure they're pre-qual. I'm focusing on listings. And so I'm a listing agent I'm a listing lender. That's a phrase I've heard in the industry a few times, and I love it. Like, yeah, like, let's talk. There's probably things that I can help you as a listing lender that you don't realize you're leaving money on the table. So that's where you present your solutions. Here's how I can help you grant your wishes. Maybe not all of them.
But then you have to do those things.
You have to do them.
And I see a lot of people say that, right? Oh, I'll help you manage your database, or I'll help you call your leads. And then don't. Right. It's easy to say. It's a whole nother thing to do.
Right. And that's a piece of it, is that there's I have one of the chapters in my book is, does the audio match the video? Right. Are you doing what you said you're going to do? Right. If you're, hey, I'm going to eat healthy, I want to get healthier, and then you're having a cheeseburger at every meal. It's like, okay, the audio is not matching the video, right? What's going on? But I think the presentation piece is, you only say things you're willing to commit to do. The last couple steps are just after you present your solutions, then it's handling any objections. Objections are good. Objections means they were listening, because if they don't have any objections, they probably weren't listening to you, or it's not a connection, or what have you. Objections mean, if you just help me kind of get over this little hump, then we can do something together. And then the last step is closing. And I don't mean closing like a hard close, like a Glengarry, Glen Ross kind of thing. I mean like closing for next steps. So in the next steps might be, hey, you need help with your database. All right, next step is, okay, let's get out our calendars. Let's book a time. I'll come to your office. We'll take a look at your database. Let's block out 90 minutes. When is that going to be? Right? Or you want help with your next open house. Man, I have the greatest strategy for open houses. I love open houses. What's the next one? Let's book it. Right? And so closing for next steps is also important for the loan officer in the situation as much as it is for the realtor, because it is, am I doing what I said I was going to do? And booking it on your calendar.
I'm going to switch gears again, if that's okay.
Yes, I love switching gears.
Okay. So about 3 or 4 years ago, a few of my friends in Vancouver that are entrepreneurs or salespeople or commission, we started a networking group. We called it Powerhouse. And to be in the networking group, you had to have been in your industry for X amount of years. You kind of had to have a name. And we just meet for happy hour twice a month. And the reason we started this networking group was for referral relationships. But what it's turned into is a mastermind group. And we had an awesome, we moved our location to a different bar because the one bar was so noisy, and this other bar put us outside in front on the street. So last night was awesome. We're all drinking beers out. It was at Top Shelf right across from our office. And each week somebody brings a topic and then assigns somebody else the topic for the next week. So last night we talked about too many irons in the fire. And I drove home and I was so excited for this podcast because you have Compiche Consulting, you're an author, Homebot, speaking. I mean, we're talking about a loan officer, a real estate agent trying to manage building new relationships, building trust, and then backing that up with actual work and managing someone's database. And they have, as loan officers, we have 6 or 7 irons in the fire every day. How do you do it? How do you have so many irons in the fire? What kind of challenges are you having, and what kind of advice do you have for 2 guys that are trying to run a mortgage practice and a podcast and our families and all this other stuff?
So when I first got into corporate sales, when I sold for ADP, they have a very specific and almost rigid sales process. Like, it's welcome to ADP. This is how you are going to sell, right? And it's super, super strict around this is your week. And it was the first time I'd heard the term time blocking, right? And it was, this is how many appointments you need to have in a week. This is the time you'll be lead generating, every week. This is when our sales meetings are, and we had weekly sales trainings. And so we had one of those kind of notebook style planners. This is old school, right? And literally part of your training one day was to sit with a highlighter and go through your weeks for the entire year and block off by color coding of what you were doing when. And
For the whole year.
For the whole year.
And you do it by week.
By week. So it's essentially it's math, right? So if I have 10 appointments a week, sorry, if I have 10 appointments a week and my conversion rate is 60%, that's 6 new clients this week. That's it's then okay, in order for me to get 10 appointments, I need to spend 6 hours a week lead generating. I need, and then you don't necessarily have to block every minute of every day, but you have to block what's important. It's sort of the put the big rocks in first kind of concept, but it's time blocking was something I learned a long time ago. And so when I've been doing this, I mean, I've done everything I had 3 little kids while managing a real estate office with over 200 agents, a staff of 6, and I left at 3:00 3 days a week to go pick up my kids. And we were successful and profitable. And I was really focused on time blocking because there were things I had to do. My boss at the time told me that I had the day before vacation syndrome, kind of. Right.
That's what I was just thinking in my head.
Yeah, it's awesome, huh?
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we get done the day before vacation. But because I left at 2:00 3 days a week, and so I only had a limited amount of time. I was getting in the office at 7:30, but I had to be out the door at 2 to pick up my kids. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have time for let's play around on social media, let's chit chat in the hallways, but I had to make time to chit chat in the hallways because I was running a real estate office, and I had to I literally put that in my time blocking because I was getting so focused on other things that I was forgetting to walk around and be nice to people.
Did you have a coach at this time, or have you had a coach?
I've had coaches multiple times. Actually, Michael Regan, who was here last week or a couple weeks ago, he was my coach. He was with Building Champions. I've had multiple coaches over the years, and been lucky enough to have some really great mentors. So some of my mentors and coaches have been friends, and so those are super important. I think it's important to have that.
And I'm going to ask you some personal questions here, but did having a coach, when you decided you want to become an author and write a book, was there a lot of value in having a coach to kind of help you with your time blocking? Because I couldn't imagine if I was doing everything I'm doing now, which isn't that much, and going to write a book at the same time.
The best advice I got was from Todd Duncan. So Todd and I had talked about the fact that I wanted to be a national speaker and get really out there. And I said, waiting a little bit till my kids are older so I could be on the road a little bit more. And he said, well, it's important to write a book. He said, do you have a book in your head? And I said, yes. And he said, it's better if it's on paper.
So hold on. So he said you were wanting to be a speaker, and he said, do you have a book?
Right, because a book adds some validity when you're a speaker, right? Mm-hmm. If you're promoting yourself as a speaker, having a published book is part of it. And this book is dedicated in memory of my mom. My mom was sort of the queen of the one-liners. I don't know if anybody has a family member and if you don't know one, you might be one that does the one-liners. And so my mom never met any of her grandchildren, but we wanted to make sure that her memory and her little one-liners that my sister and I use in raising our own kids were put down. So we started writing them out. And then I have my own one-liners, and I had a few others from my fiance and my dad. And we ended up having 52 little one-liners. And then, so each chapter is the one-liner, the story of where the one-liner originated, and then the little lesson for business or your life. And the longest chapter is 2.5 pages long. So it's written for salespeople. So,
good. That's awesome.
So it's, so I had this idea in my head, and Todd had said to me that if to write this book, because we had talked about kind of what it was to spend an hour a day, spend a 1 hour a day writing, just an hour. And he said, some days it's going to be like a hot knife through butter. It's going to be easy. It's just going to, the words are going to come out of the page. And other days you're going to spend that hour and write like 2 sentences. And it's just, you're stuck. It's just not coming. And that's exactly how it was. And so it was just an hour a day. And some days came very easily and other days didn't. And it just, if I committed to an hour a day, I'd get the book written. And
so was it the same hour every day?
I pretty much did it in the morning, first thing when I was fresh, and so that I could get that. And then it was done. And there's something about, it's the whole eat that frog. I mean, there's lots of things around getting those things done early. I'm a morning person, so I have a lot of energy in the morning. And so I liked it, getting it done in the morning, and a sense of accomplishment of like, I did something. I've never thought of myself as a writer. I never was an English major or anything like that. And, but I was like, okay, I want to get this out. So it was a sense of accomplishment to do that.
was it easy to stay disciplined with an hour a day, or were there cheat days?
Oh,
Or were
yeah,
there days
cheat-
where
yeah,
you're like,
no.
I'm not going to do it today.
Yeah, absolutely. I skip some days. Right? So no, I'm human, and I am not the most disciplined person on the planet. So it was an exercise for me in developing that muscle, as it were, of discipline. So that it's because for me, it gave me a great sense of accomplishment. It's sort of a little bit how I feel about working out. Like, I don't love the gym. I know people that love to go to the gym, and I just over here. Yeah, I had that feeling. That's why I looked in that direction. But but I love the sense of accomplishment when I finish, right? I mean, I run a half marathon once a year, and I don't love running, but I love how I feel when I'm finished. I love how I feel that I'm working towards this goal. I like that after effect. And I think that some of those things we don't like to do, but we know are important to do, you do have that sense of accomplishment when you finish. And yeah, and those days that I skipped, I was like, I don't like this feeling of I didn't get to it today. Or, you know what, I only got half an hour in because I let my phone interrupt me, right? So turning off the other devices, turning off the email. I mean, that was the other thing is I would turn on and open up my Word doc, and that was it. No email in the background, no instant messaging, nothing. Just focus on that one thing to make sure to focus on that.
One thing Joe Rogan always says, just a second, right,
Yeah.
is, and I love this because he talks about working out. He's a nut too. But he says, when you feel like that, like you don't want to do it, it's not going to be fun. You want to take the day off. Take tomorrow off, is what. And I think
Well,
Jocko
Jocko
said that too.
Jocko has a video on that. Yeah.
Take tomorrow off. I love that.
Yeah.
And then because then tomorrow comes and you take the next day off.
Right.
One thing I was thinking as you were talking about that is the fact that, I think it was one of our midweek motivators where it was a writer, and he said he just forced himself to write 2 crappy pages per day because, you sit down and you just get that brain lock and nothing will come out on paper. And he said, I just told myself, just write 2 crappy pages a day, and you do that for enough days, and, some good material will come out of that. And while I was thinking about that analogy is, even if you don't want to prospect or whatever the case is,
Right.
fine, do a crappy hour of prospecting. It's going to be better than 0 hours of prospecting because you're probably going to get 1 good conversation out of 10 bad phone calls. So you just got to put yourself out there and do it, just like writing 2 crappy pages a day.
Well, you remember when we were doing Power Hour? We would have the Power Hour.
yeah.
We'd have these little signs we put on our door, like "Do not disturb," like the room service signs. But, yeah. And we dreaded it every time we did it. But I remember walking out there and going, "Why don't we do this every freaking day?" Like,
Yeah, I mean, you'd always have at least like 20 minutes or, if it wasn't a full hour, like you got something out of it for sure.
Well, I used to teach I still teach it occasionally, a class called How to Make the Phone Ring. So do you know how to make the phone ring?
Call people.
You dial it out first, right? It does make outbound calls, right? So it's like, oh, how come nobody's calling me? Well, how many did you call, right? So, the idea of that, in order to make the phone ring, you have to dial it out first. And even if it's like, I'm just going to make 10 calls, fine. Even if you leave 10 voicemail messages, or 10 text messages, or that you're putting something out there in the universe. They call it shaking the money tree. And if you think about an orchard, if you're shaking a tree, the same tree every day, even for little bursts, there's a ripple effect that happens. There's vibrations in the ground, and sometimes something falls off the tree that was 3 rows back, and it's like, what? I wasn't even shaking that tree. But the energy that's out there, the little micro vibrations that happen in the universe, as it were, it will bring that stuff back to you, and it's crazy. But yeah, we used to teach a class on how to make the phone ring, and we did 20 minutes of role play, 20 minutes of real play, and then we'd circle back. And you got a lottery ticket for every referral, and you got referral or appointment that was set, and you got a lottery ticket for making at least 10 dials. So it was just fun. We used to just, have some fun with it. And then it became a little bit of a competition, right? So a lot of salespeople are competitive, not all, but a lot of them are very competitive. And so it was a little game that happens, like, oh, who's going to, and then we used to, some of the things we've done with, sometimes you have a little bell, like, the doctor's office, you ding the bell. So if you got a referral or an appointment, you got to go up and ring the bell. So as you're making your calls and you hear the bell ding down the hall, you're like, oh, somebody else. Okay, I'm going to keep going because people are getting appointments or getting referrals, so I can go get mine, as it were.
yeah, I think that energy is so important. And we've worked in environments where it's just Ryan and I, and we're the only energy. And we worked in environments that have lots of people in it. So having that energy is important.
When we had our bell too, every time a loan closed.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And it was kind of fun because like our assistant would want to ring the bell, and like sometimes you're like, no, I'm ringing the bell.
Yeah.
I heard of this one.
Yeah, the office where we share an office with a developer, and they have a gong, like a big gong that's painted rainbow. And I've never heard them
awesome.
bang it, but
No.
I've always wanted to go up and bang that gong. So you wrote your book, and then you started speaking? Is that the order
No, and
things
it's kind
happened?
of simultaneously. I mean, I started speaking when I was Keller Williams, and then when you manage your real estate office, you're speaking all the time, right? Doing trainings in your office. And then I was getting sort of how I fell into working for a mortgage company is that they would hire me to come in and do event. Actually, one of my first training events I did for a mortgage company was the how to make the phone ring.
Yeah.
And because again, I was giving them scripts on what to say to real estate agents and to their referral partners. And so I was sort of speaking and sort of, it was a bit of, hey, could you come and teach my people this or that? And so I was getting those sorts of opportunities. And then the speaking sort of happened as part of every job I've had. With HomeBot, but I do some public speaking around HomeBot. And so there's lots of those pieces that happen as just part of what I do. And then, but to really get my name out there a little bit more, I wanted to write the book. And then also a big part of it was to memorialize my mom.
Sure.
And so that was a piece of it too. So I thought, well, if at least my kids read it, that's somebody. So,
Yeah.
but it's been fun. So I've had, I mean, like Women's Council Realtor has me come and speak at events, and NAREP has had me speak, and a different association of realtors and different companies have me speak. I'll get, so, and sometimes you were talking about the irons in the fire. There's so much crossover. So a lot of times I will do a HomeBot event that involves a training. So that how to leverage a tool like HomeBot into how to speak realtor, how to leverage HomeBot for realtors, and showing them how to take this tool and incorporate into, now what do you say to your clients? Here, let me help you with your past clients, with your database, how to make friends and capture leads and all that kind of stuff.
You know, I've learned a lot from Dave Savage,
Mm-hmm.
just watching him. I mean, he has his mortgage coach company, but he provides so much value outside of that, right? You can go to his YouTube page and spend years watching all the videos.
Yep.
Yep.
And he's so consistent, and he's always there, and he's always trying to help the industry, the salespeople in the industry. So I think there's a huge lesson in what you just said and what Dave does is the build value outside of the product you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan and I started doing that just through coaching. We started coaching some of our real estate agents, especially the newer ones. And some of them starve for that.
Oh, yeah.
And over a short period of time of maybe 6 to 9 months, the newer agents that met with me on a regular basis and I really helped coach them, they're referring me way more than my big producers that have been referring me for years. And so I think there's a huge lesson to learn there. Let's talk leadership a little bit. Running Keller Williams branch with 200 agents, you're consulting. I'd imagine that there are a ton of leadership lessons you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Are you as good of a leader now as you were when you first started managing?
I should hope I'm better. I think one of the things that I learned from Keller Williams as far as leadership, that was probably where I got a good chunk of the training, was learning about yourself. So I'm certified as a DISC behavioral analysis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the DISC. Okay, so.
But for those that aren't,
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want me to do it?
I'll let you do it.
Okay, so the DISC behavioral.
I'm not certified.
Okay. So DISC is an acronym, and it's a behavioral style. It's how our behaviors show up, and it's D is for driver, I is influencer, S is systematic, and C is compliant. And most of us have a little bit of all of that in us, and it, so that we can. But we have some natural things that will naturally come to the surface in our behavior and shows up in our behavior. High eyes tend to wear bright colors, right? So there's some things that just show up in our behavior. But what's interesting about that is that it doesn't test for intelligence or morality. So knowing that you have a natural style for something and then being able to adapt it based on the situation, based on the audience, those sorts of things are important. But what I liked about the DISC behavioral style is it takes the judgment piece out a little bit. Like, oh, that's just how someone's hardwired. It's not that they don't like me. They're just super goal oriented, or they're super detail oriented. Like, it's the client that wants to read every single disclosure line by line by line. They're not doing it to slow down the process. They're doing it because they need it to make a good decision, right? It's a behavioral style. They're not here to try to mess you up and slow down the process, right? It's just something super important to them to feel safe. And so what I love about leadership is knowing your own style and then looking at other people's styles and how to communicate. So, and have you guys ever read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Pat Lencioni?
I've heard of it.
You know
Heard of it?
Patrick? You know Patrick Palmer?
I do not.
He's our boss. He's been hounding me to read that book.
Yeah, read the book. It's awesome. So I have been trained by Pat's team on doing leadership offsites. And so those are super fun. I don't do a ton of them, but I do a few every year, and they're really interesting. The 5 dysfunctions of a team are trust, right? So trust is at the foundation. Weird, right?
Yeah.
right. And so it's that is such a key part of leadership, that if there needs to be some trust, and when we've talked about this in the rapport building, trust starts with vulnerability. Like, you cannot have trust without vulnerability. They're together. Brene Brown, does her whole things around being vulnerable, and that's where true connection happens, is when you're vulnerable.
Can leaders be too vulnerable to their team?
I don't think they can, because they know anyway, right? I've been to some events where Pat Lencioni's speaking, and somebody asked him that, and he said, like, the whole never let him see you sweat kind of thing. Mm-hmm. He's like, they already know you're sweating, right? So you might as well own it, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, look at how badly I'm sweating, right? Like, they know, right? So, and it's okay to be vulnerable. Hey guys, I need your help. Can I tell you a story?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
No stories allowed on the podcast. It's not that kind of show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So I was managing a real estate office I had taken over, and I was the third manager in 6 months. Wow. There had been a merger, there had been a brand shift, and it was a really interesting dynamic. Is that polite? Is that polite to say that? So I was brought into the office in a community where people knew who I was. And literally they had blended these two offices, but they weren't blended. So I was introduced by the CEO of the company, and he goes, oh guys, Katey's going to be the new manager. Hey, Katey, that side's the Hatfields, that side's the McCoys. That was how I was introduced. Yeah. Wow. Yay.
Got an uphill.
Yeah. I was like, okay, here we go. And so I interviewed every single person, kind of basically re-recruited every person, and everybody told me they felt like an outsider. I was like, okay, well then who's the insider, right? If everybody feels like an outsider, who's the insider? So we started to make some changes around shifting the culture. Well, again, third manager in 6 months, some of them were just done. And so I think it was my second month there, I had 19 agents out of about 85 resign in 1 month. 19. Ever been broken up with?
Yikes.
It's not you.
Yeah.
It's me. 19 times.
Jeez.
So the 19th one was a friend of mine, and we sat in the conference room, and he cried, and he was like, I'm sorry, Katey, I'm going with this group. And I was like, I almost begged him to stay, and he walked out of the conference room, like the tears streaming down. I walk out of the conference room really trying to hold it together. Now, I'm half Irish, half Italian, so holding it together is not my strength, right? So,
and did you feel like you were failing at this time?
Oh yeah, like I was it was a gut punch. 19 people breaking up with you. Now, granted, there was a couple people I was going to help them pack, but for the most part, it was brutal. And I walked out of that conference room, and I saw another agent. So think big Hawaiian guy, right? I'm actually having lunch with him next week. Okay. And I walk out of the conference room, and he sees me, and I'm visibly shaken. There's no way. And he says, you okay? And I just kind of shook my head, no. And he comes over, and he gives me those big Hawaiian hugs, right? Well, I lost it. I start crying, right? This is not recommended as a leadership tip to openly cry in the office. But obviously they could see me sweat, right? Yeah. And so he told me later that he had just left a meeting with 5 realtors where they were all talking about leaving themselves. And he went back to that same group and said, we can't leave her. We have to help her. We have to help her be successful. Wow. We have to help her turn this office around. And that group became my core group. And we did turn the office around. And we weren't like the number one office. And it wasn't that kind of a story, but it was enough of a story around vulnerability I let him see me sweat. I was a wreck. It was awful. And I felt like a failure. I felt like nobody liked me, right? My behavioral style is I really like to be liked. And so that was just a gut punch. And, when you manage a real estate office, recruiting is a huge piece of it. And when you lose a whole bunch of agents and all in one shot, my boss at the time was super supportive of me. Hey, this is not you. This is, just a nature of what happened, but it still hurts, right? It still is terrible. And so everybody knew it. So might as well show it. Might as well say, hey guys, I need help. Let's get together. And part of the next step at that point was we got everybody in the room and we decided to build our own culture. Like we're going to create something brand new. And that's actually how we recruited too.
So I really want to dive into the culture piece because this is something that Ryan and I are really passionate about. Our boss, Patrick Palmer, is really passionate about it. But before I do, I don't want to overlook something you said. And you were talking about how your boss said it's not you. It's not, you're not the reason these people are leaving. Did you find that he had a high level of leadership to be able to recognize that and not come down on you?
Yes, he's also my friend, so it was being nice.
Do you think that good leaders help make good leaders?
Oh, absolutely. That's how the definition. Well, there's two ways to define a leader. For one, it's how many people are following them, because you're not a leader by yourself. You're a leader if people are following you. Other leaders, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, and yes, very much so. He developed me from the beginning, actually. And helped me and identified me as a leader. Actually, another funny story. He and I worked together at two different companies, and he was the one who had originally hired me at Keller Williams. And it was the first time I did a DISC behavioral style assessment. And I was in all these assessments and things have been around since the Crusades. I mean, this is nothing new. This is how they used to identify which soldiers would be best in different battles, was from the 4 styles. But I was constantly apologizing. Like I said, it says you're not very detail oriented. Yeah, I know, I'm working on that. So that you get super goal focused. Yeah, I know, sometimes I get so focused, I got blinders on, I'm working on that. So I kept apologizing. And he stopped me and he said, why are you apologizing? He said, you have the behavioral style of a Fortune 500 CEO. We just need to get you in the right seat on the bus where your natural style can flourish and you can just go to work every day and be you. And I was like, really? This is okay to be like this? Right? That I always felt that I had to work on my weaknesses. And if anything, it's the opposite. Get better at what you have a natural affinity to do.
I love that last part of what you said, because it's really easy to be negative. In fact, in our networking group yesterday, we were talking about too many irons in the fire, and everyone was giving their examples. And then somebody called me out and said, whenever you're talking about yourself, you're always talking in a negative way. I said, dude, what are you talking about? I'm the most positive guy in the room. And he goes, no. He goes, even on your podcast, we hear it. And it was eye-opening. These are people that I built a relationship with over a period of time. And to hear them be open and vulnerable with me, I was like, oh, I had no idea. And then so I started to think about it. And even with Patrick, who's mentoring me on leadership, he's brought that up too. So let me ask you this question. How do you identify if you have a boss or a leader that's not helping you develop? What point do you say, I'm not surrounded by the right people? Is there a way for people to identify that maybe they could become a better leader or excel faster if they had somebody else leading them?
Well, there's a philosophy, and there was actually a YouTube video that went around yesterday, and actually one of my mother's favorite lines, tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you want to be. And so who you spend the most time with, or who you are by your actions defining who you want to be. And so if you're around somebody that's not helping you to lead, but maybe they have other great attributes, then you need to go find what you need. And sometimes then maybe that is a networking group. Maybe it's finding a coach. Maybe it's getting outside of your industry like you've done. I'm a big fan. I'm part of a mastermind group there's nobody in my group that's in the real estate industry, and I love it. And it's, I don't know if you've heard of Vistage, but it's Vistage is a national networking group that was actually started for CEOs, and they do CEO masterminds, and they do executive masterminds, and they do for consultants. We have our little mastermind group that we do, and I get a ton of leadership development out of that group. That is a little different than a traditional boss. So you can learn something from your boss who can be a really great person, but maybe doesn't know how to develop you. Like that may not be their fault. If they don't know how to develop you, maybe it's something you want to do together. And maybe sometimes you can take your boss with you. Like, hey, this is something I really wanted to develop my own leadership stuff. And I want to go take some classes. I want to go to sales mastery. I want to go to masterminds. I want to go to different things to sharpen this saw. And hey, why don't you come with me? Why don't we do this together? Is this stuff valuable to you? Because sometimes they don't know what they don't know, right? And they may be a really great person and have a lot of industry knowledge, or there may be some other valuable pieces to them, but the development of other leaders is not something they naturally know how to do. So it's like, why don't we go do this together? Let's read some books together. Let's, that you can manage up. There's a way to manage up in getting what you want by being collaborative.
Did you have like that epiphany moment when you realized that you were helping other people become leaders?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that I've had an epiphany moment. I think my I don't really coach people. My email is Katey at Coach Katey. And so, but that kind of started when I was coaching real estate agents, and I was also coaching Little League. So I was Coach Katey. So it just sort of worked for everything. And I tend to coach leaders as part of, I do a lot of it with that offsite that I do around the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Those are when I have the aha moments. I think the most is when I'm working with people that are already in leadership position, but they don't know what they don't know. And I open their eyes to something that maybe they knew or they learned as a kid, or sometimes it's like, hey, vulnerability builds trust. Well, I knew that, but I didn't think about it. It's like, that's a huge leadership tool, right? Like, okay, now I can take something that I intrinsically know. I'm a well-educated person. I've had life experience. I know that. But now how do I take that information and turn it into something that's going to make me a better leader? Like those are the most fun, and learning how to be a leader, how to hold somebody accountable. I think that's that's one of the leadership things I love to work with. Especially I was working with branch managers when I worked for a mortgage company, and like, and I got to hold my guys accountable. I feel like I'm checking their homework. And I'm like, you are, right? And why did the teacher check your homework?
Make sure you did it right.
Well, and make sure you learned something, right? Because if you didn't learn it, then that's on me. Like if I'm your teacher and you didn't learn it and I check your homework and you didn't get it, well, then I got to pull you aside and go, hey, Cody, let's you and I sit down together, because my bad. Like you can't blame the student. You got to blame the teacher. So you didn't get it. No worries. Let's help you get it. And I believe that if a manager is sitting with a salesperson and that salesperson says, hey, my goal is to, I'll just tell mine, to live in Italy for a month a year, right? Like that's
a good goal.
That's the mountaintop for me, right? Like, okay, cool. Awesome. If you're my manager and I tell you that, and then you never ask me how that's going, why did I tell you that to begin with? Like, why aren't you checking my homework? Why aren't you making sure and helping me get there? Like, hey, how's it going? What's your pipeline look like? What are you closing? All right, you've got all sorts of stuff that is going towards close, but I don't see anything in the top of the funnel. Hey, we got to get to Italy, man. Let's. So like, sometimes I'm a big fan of putting those visual things, right? That having the picture of where you want,
the
Florence,
vision board.
Right? The vision board of like, okay, this is why I'm making my 10 bad calls.
You could make Italy look like a funnel.
This is true. You're right. I like that. Yeah, for sure. So it's, I think that the manager aha moments are in those little like, oh, I hate, when I'm teaching somebody how to hold their team accountable is an interesting thing. And that's where it can be fun. So be fun.
Yeah. And normally we use the word fun when you're talking about accountability.
Oh no, accountability is fun, because it's also when you get to high five people.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, part of the things I do with the 5 dysfunctions of a team is we talk about accountability. Accountability isn't just checking your numbers. Accountability is your behavior, right? And I call it the spinach in your teeth thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you only tell your friends when you see spinach in their teeth, right? Like, hey, Ryan, hey, come here, right? Like, come here, you got a little spinach in your teeth. Like, oh, hey, thanks. And you go and take care of it, right? But if somebody you see walking down the street and they got spinach in their teeth, they're like, whatever. Like, I'm not going to necessarily stop a complete stranger and tell them. But you tell people that are important to you, because you want them to be perceived out in the world in the best possible light. Well, that's what happens in teams, right? So if a leader if somebody is constantly rolling their eyes at meetings, right? And they don't even realize they're doing it. Like, that's a spinach in your teeth kind of deal. Like, hey, come here. As the leader of the team, I got to give you a heads up. Or even as peers, I got to give you a heads up. I don't even think you're rare that you do this, but you're a major eye roller. And it's like you said about you didn't realize you were being, talking negatively so about yourself. That's a spinach in your teeth thing.
Yeah.
That's somebody being vulnerable. But you can only have that kind of a conversation if there's already trust built.
It's amazing how naive you can be about yourself. Because I would have, 6 months ago, I would have said, I'm really respectful about not having my phone out when I'm talking to people. Completely wrong. Right? And that was a big spinach in my teeth for a long time. And luckily I work with people that have no problem telling me when I have spinach in my teeth.
It's awesome.
Ryan.
It's awesome.
And it was like, dude, you're doing it again. And I wouldn't even realize it, that I was looking at my phone. And so if I wouldn't have had those people, I'd probably have my phone out right now.
Right. I had to turn mine completely off to make sure that my ADD doesn't, kick
Well, normally I do the do not disturb, but I didn't do that. And for those of you, it's 9:05 in the morning. So for the last 10 minutes, my ass has been buzzing. Let's talk about culture.
Okay.
I'm excited to hear. This is something we talk a lot about on this podcast, and it's pretty important to Ryan and I, office culture and having it down on paper. So talk about culture, maybe start with that Keller Williams, because I think that's where you left off.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things about culture that I find interesting is the difference between what's on the company logo or the mission statement and what's actually happening. Again, one of those is the audio matching the video. Is this really who you are? Right. And so I think you got to own your culture, and culture almost always stems from the leader. So every company, every office reflects their leadership. So I would meet with branch managers, both in real estate and on the mortgage side, and people would say, "Oh, my team is like this and that," and like say some negative things about their team, and then I just listen, and they're like, "What?" And I go, "Hate to break this to you, but everything you're talking about your team is exactly what you do, right? And it's that your team is reflecting what they see in you." And so if you want to change the culture of your office, it's got to start from the top. And so if there's a work hard, play hard culture, then awesome. If we're a highly systematic team and we do things with systems, we're Colonel Sanders, man. We're going to, create the recipe and stick to the system.
I have a question.
Go.
Is that true with vulnerability as well? If, as a leader, you're very vulnerable with your people, do you think that creates a culture of vulnerability?
Huge.
Because I know personally I've struggled with people being open with me, where you hear, and I'm sure this is common in all work environments, where you have employee A that's more than happy to express how they feel to employee B. But, or maybe when agents were leaving Keller Williams, where you had no idea they were unhappy until they're at your desk. So is that vulnerability, can that be part of culture?
Yeah. And I think it's important to even talk about it. Like, hey, we're going to have a culture of vulnerability here, is that we're going to be open and honest with each other, and the kind truth, right? So, I'm just being honest. I hate that, right? Like, I'm just being honest. Yeah, but it's brutal honesty, right? There's a way to be kind around honesty, and like, hey, I want to talk to you about this, and this has really bothered me, or this. Okay, well, let's create that. But if the leader is not willing to be vulnerable, then nobody else will either, right? And that happens in the corporate world a ton. So, sure.
I'm going all over the place. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to talk about this because we did this at a previous company where we talked behind closed doors all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe that was, obviously it was a bad decision because it got brought up to us later on, but we definitely lost that part of our culture. How awesome is Katey?
Really good. This is good stuff. I can't wait to read her book. I should have read it prior to this.
A lot of irons in the fire. Yeah, it's crazy that we got to talk about Jocko.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine what it would be like to work with that guy.
I'm trying to remember. I had a thought a minute ago while we were talking about, while she was talking about the disc. And one of mine on some of the other things that we've discussed is my communication skills. Mm-hmm. And I anticipate that everybody's just like me. and I like to get back to people right away. I had a newer realtor email me Sunday morning, and when I read the email at first, I just didn't have the time or the capacity to respond in the manner that I wanted to. And I was like, oh, I'll do it later. And then Sunday night rolls around and I hadn't. And I was like, oh, I'll do it first thing tomorrow. So yesterday morning rolls around and I just start drafting the email. And then we have a meeting, or I had a phone call that came in, and then we had a meeting. And then, all of a sudden now it's 10:30 and I still haven't sent out this email. So now it's been over 24 hours. And to me, that's a colossal failure in my mind and heart.
Yeah.
And sent out the email probably close to 11-ish, get a response back. Thank you so much for the quick response.
But in your head, you were,
you
you were expecting him to be upset because it.
Yeah.
Did you start off the email with, I apologize for the delay?
So I started to, and I had read something recently that said, quit apologizing for everything. We're talking about DISC. And while we were talking about DISC, I was discussing how I had a newer realtor email me Sunday morning, and I wanted to email her back, and I didn't have the capacity right at the moment to give the full answer I wanted to. So I was like, I'll do it later. Well, later turned into Monday morning, and then we got busy. And so the email doesn't go out till 11-ish. In my brain, it was a failure. She responds back with, thank you so much for the quick response. And I'm going, quick response would have been, I would have just emailed you back as soon as I saw your
10 seconds, right?
As soon as I saw your email come in. And so also when Cody was talking about having his phone out, we all do this, the phone's ringing and we're like, this is absolutely the most important thing that's happening right now. When in reality, the most important thing that is happening is the face-to-face conversation. And that person will most likely leave a voicemail. And if they don't, you have caller ID, and you can call them right back and say, hey, sorry, I was just wrapping up a meeting. What can I help you with?
Right.
And so, that whole that whole perception of what you have in your brain and what you think they're thinking is probably not one and the same.
Yeah. Well, we teach people how to treat us.
Absolutely.
Right. So I have a friend of mine who's been a very successful, she still is a very successful realtor. And when she got into the business, she had little kids and she's like, I don't work nights and weekends. Right. So she had that in her voicemail. Right. I work from, 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, evenings and weekends by appointments. Cause it wasn't just, I'm not 24/7. She had various kids and various sports and running around. And she's like, no, I'm going to be there for dinner and bedtime with my kids. Like now, am I willing to make exceptions for that? Sure. But it's on my terms, not anybody else's. She said the people that got most upset with her voicemail were other realtors. Clients are fine with it. Clients were like, okay, yeah, cool. We like you. We want to work with you. Sure. I'll take an extended lunch or go into work late or leave work early. And that was the other thing is like people make time in their week. They take time out of a work week to go get a haircut.
Yeah.
They can take time out of the work week to discuss their largest financial investment. So she was like, this is how I run my business. Like I'm willing to make exceptions to the rules, but I'm gonna do it on my time, not on your email time or your, that this is how I respond. And it was really interesting, the stories that she's told me over the years, and she's a very successful realtor. It's just interesting.
We danced around work-life balance quite a bit in this conversation. Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank. I subscribe to Success Magazine, and every issue comes with a CD. So I was listening to Mr. Wonderful, and he talked about work-life balance and his definition of work-life balance, which is work your ass off. But he said, and this is something that really resonated with me, is if you're going to set a goal, be okay with the sacrifices in the beginning, or opposite, right? Make like your agent there said, I'm not going to work nights and weekends. Or if I'm going to set this big audacious goal of writing a book and doing this and that and this, then be okay knowing that you're not going to make all your son's baseball games. So talk about that. No, just joking.
Yeah.
Just
No.
joking.
Well,
No,
you kind of almost, what you just triggered in my head was, as you were saying that, I'm like thinking about the work-life balance and how important some technology can be for that. And, you know, I mean, the upside downside is that you can be at the kids' baseball game and respond to an email, take a quick phone call, right? That there's an upsides of technology that can help with and I mean, I've had many people say, I'm at my kid's game. Can I call you? Yeah. Hey, cool. And I think there's a lot more, we're available 24/7 as it were because of technology. But I think there's also the understanding of that, yes, just because I have my phone in my pocket doesn't mean I'm always going to answer it, right?
Do you think it's okay? So when you're talking about work-life balance, too many irons in the fire, how am I managing all this time blocking? There's all these answers, technology, coaching, time blocking. But there's, at some point, one of the answers has to be work more hours, right?
Right. Well,
add 6 hours to your week.
Correct. Correct. And that, like, don't sleep. I've heard, hey, sleep when you're dead. I don't, but like working, getting 6 hours of sleep versus 7. But that's a personal choice to how that works for you. See, if I get less than 7 hours of sleep, nobody wants to be around me anyway. So it wouldn't matter. I wouldn't, not that it wouldn't matter, but I wouldn't be as successful during the day without that piece. Well, and I mean, it's, yes, and work-life balance doesn't have to be the same for the season in your life. Maria Shriver says, you can have it all, just not all at the same time, right? So is it, what season is this for you right now? Are you starting a new business? Are you writing a book? Are you working for a startup, right? So what season is this for you, right? So I remember sitting down with my kids, particularly after I got divorced, and that I was like, okay, I'm going to be working more than I normally do. I'm going to be doing some work at home because this is what's going on. Again, being vulnerable with my kids, even when they were relatively young, about this is what needs to happen because of what's helped, where I am in my career, what I want to do for us financially, all of those kinds of things, and just being open about it. And I think that just in the same way that clients can respect that, hey, I'm at my kid's baseball game. Is this an urgent thing, or can it wait till tomorrow? And most, 9 times out of 10, it's, yeah, I'll wait till tomorrow. But sometimes it is like, yeah, I need you to step out. I need to talk to you. Okay, cool. But your family can be the same way. Like, hey, I gotta spend I'm not going to be home for dinner every night during the week because I need to work until 7:00 for, what's reasonable as far as our family. And this is why, right? This is where the train is going. I think your family can be just as easily open to dialogue in the same way that your clients are.
Mm-hmm. I find myself falling into this pit all the time, where it's not your business how many hours I work. Well,
right.
It's totally my family's business. But, I love that, and we've been doing this a lot because my wife took on more responsibility, a new job, so we had to kind of restructure. Mm-hmm. But we she was smart enough to sit down and say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the sacrifices we're going to have to make, where I didn't give her the same courtesy. And I still don't sometimes. It's something I have to work on. But I think that it is okay. I love the seasonality part, because there are times where it is okay to work more, and work-life balance for me, and we've been talking about this a lot too, it isn't necessarily an exercise in time blocking, although we just said it is, because we sit down and talk about, we're going to make these sacrifices. But it's also, is writing this book going to make you happier in your personal life, right? Does what I do at work make me a happier person at home? And is that a time blocking exercise? Or for some people, maybe it's work few hours, have less stress at work makes me happier. For crazy entrepreneurs, it's, if I'm not working 1 million hours a week, going 1 million miles an hour, then I become unhappy. Or, for our family and for my wife, it's a lot to do with accomplishment and success. And if she hits a point where she doesn't get that anymore, she becomes unhappy outside of work. So I think, it's both. Right.
And your work doesn't happen in a vacuum, and your family life doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Last week, my daughter graduated from high school. I was one of my most unproductive weeks, right? And it wasn't even, I wasn't graduating from high school, right? But there was just a lot of stuff going on throughout the week, and just mentally, I was mentally with my daughter, right? And not mentally in work mode.
Did that take a lot of effort
to
be in the moment?
No, it didn't take a lot of time to be in the moment, but it for me, it was the guilt. I'm Catholic. I feel guilty about everything, right? So, but that was the guilt part. It was just like, I have not been on, like, it was a Friday morning conversation. I called our sales director at HomeBot, and I was like, man, I have not been on my A game this week. And he was, cool. Like, yeah, you got some stuff going on right now, and it's fine. But it's just that the guilt piece of like, oh man, I've not had a great, super productive week. I got to really up my game next week. But you know what? I'm gonna be in the moment and not have my phone out and just. In theory, you only graduate from high school once, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's I want to be present with her on this day, and that was important for me to be there mentally, emotionally, and everything, and let the guilt go. Like, again, it's a season, it's a week, right? I get 51 other chances to be super productive in that week, and life happens, and having some grace is important. I used to tell one of my staff people, I said, look, if you need a mental health day, just tell me. Like, I'm way cool with mental health days. Like, if you need I've got a lot going on. My world seems to be spinning. I just need a day.
Do you know the day that the most mental health days off were used were the day after the last election? I heard from so many people that said, yeah, I had employees taking mental health days.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even know. That was when I learned that was a thing, that some companies offer the mental health.
Oh, that's funny. I don't even know that it was a thing when I offered it to her. It was just more like it was more of like, don't lie to me. Don't put yourself in a place where you have to be lying. Like, if you, I remember her calling me and going, hey, remember that thing about mental health? She's like, it's not really mental health. I just got kid stuff going on. And she's like, I got to run all over. I got to run errands. I just got to be in super mom mode for a day, and I can't come into the office. And I'm like, go. The shop will not fall apart with you being gone for a day. Right. So I think it's just important, again, when we talk about vulnerability, just be open and honest and transparent. And, let's just tell me what's going on with you.
I did that last weekend, Memorial Day weekend. I ran hard all weekend, and then we had to go to a barbecue. And I didn't want to go to the barbecue. I love these people. They're close friends of ours. But I worked a half the day on Monday, and I just felt like I wanted to spend time with my 7-year-old daughter and lay on the couch and not go to this barbecue. My wife had to go. She wanted to go. So I was like, you know what? Just tell them I'm sick. And I was like, you know what? Maybe Reagan can be sick. So I start forming these white lies of how I can get out of this. Mm-hmm. And so finally I said, just tell them I don't feel like going.
Right.
And so she did. And somebody else sent, they were on a group text, oh, I'm not going to make it because our daughter's really sick. So somebody else used the sick lie, the white lie. And I didn't. I chose the high road for the first time on that situation, right? And a couple days go by, and they're like, yeah, she must have been really sick because on Facebook they were out doing XYZ and doing all these fun things. So she got busted. But it was almost like when my wife said, oh yeah, Cody he's burnt out. He just didn't want to come. It was almost like a good thing. Right. Like they appreciate it. They're like, oh, totally get it. Thanks for not lying to us.
Right. Well, and it also gives people permission to say the same thing. Like, it gets permission to everybody to be honest and open. I'm not feeling up for it today. Like, man, I want to sit in my pajamas all day and not leave the house. Mm-hmm. Dude, I think everybody's had days like that, right? And it's like, okay, well, and I think that's the thing when we talk about the expectations, Ryan, about like what my perception is and what's everyone going to think. And well, you know what? When you're your true self and your most honest self, it gives everybody else permission to be their true and honest self. And that's what's really cool.
And do you think that can be, the flip side of that can be dangerous too? Like if you don't inform your clients or whoever you're working with on what's going on, that it gives them the opportunity to write their own story? Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, you have the opportunity to have the narrative, right? So it's and the lying thing gets tricky, right? Mm-hmm. It's the like, oh, I'm just going to tell a little white lie because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Well, then it compounds. And then it's like, okay, well, if you lied to me about something little, like maybe you're going to lie to me about something big, right? So it becomes a slippery slope. And it's like, versus, hey, I got some news for you. It's not great news, but I think we have a solution. It's just, it may not be the solution you're excited about, but it's a solution that I think we can work on together. Let's talk about this. I think that's a much better conversation than, I know a lot of people don't like to give bad news. Well, healthy conversations are not always easy. But they're healthy. And so the healthy is more important than the easy, right? The honest is more important than the easy. So I think it's deciding what is more important. Is it more important to make somebody feel better, or is it more important to be honest? And so it's like, okay, well, in the long run, like, even if you do, I'm going to tell a little white lie now. Well, what happens when it goes a week and they're like, what, you knew for a week and you didn't tell me that this was happening? And now it's a giant mess versus a more uncomfortable conversation early on in the process.
So what happens when you're honest to somebody from a leadership standpoint? You're being honest with somebody that you're leading, and they don't appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time. So I say it doesn't happen to me. I create those opportunities all the time. I'm a very direct person. So when somebody calls me for coaching, that's usually one of the first things I tell, and I think I said to you before we started filming and recording here, is I said, if you ask me a question, I will answer it. And so there's pros and cons to that. So I had, usually it's we had talked, Ryan, about giving the stink eye is, usually when you've hit the mark, right? If they don't like it, it's because there's a component of they know that they have to own it. And the owning it part is not fun. And so I actually had a guy call me. He said, I know you don't, I don't coach people one-on-one. I don't have a structure set up, and that's not my gift. Michael does a phenomenal job of that, but that's not my gift. But I'll do more like consulting. So I have people that will say, hey, can you come to my office? I need some help with a business plan, or I need you to kind of just have that forest from the trees kind of thing. Let's come in and strategize for a half a day. I'll do some of that. Or even just, again, I had a buddy call me and says, I think I need your brain for a minute. And I hammered him. And he got real quiet on the other end of the phone. And then he said, I don't like what you said, and you're right. And and I think that's just the part of letting it sit. They might not like the feedback, but let it sit for a second. Let it sit. Like, don't defend yourself, though you want to. Like, oh, you feel bad about that. But sometimes we learn our best lessons in failure, the mirror gets held up and you're like, oh, I do have spinach in my teeth. Oh, man. All right. Those are good lessons. Those are important lessons. They don't have to like it, but part of it, somebody doesn't like it but they're unwilling to change it. That's something else going on.
Well, it's got to be tricky too from a leadership standpoint. If you make a correction for somebody or point something out that they need to change, they may not see that result for some time, right? Because maybe it takes weeks or a couple months of numbers to see those results. So to have that faith that that person will get there, their eyes will be open to that was the right move. I mean, that's got to be hard too, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I don't like to say change is hard, because change is a choice, right? Life is about choices. So right now, this path that you're on is leading you down to the dungeon. Is this what you want? Because if that's what you want to go march down to the dungeon, I'm not going to stop you. And I think that's one of the things as a leader, we can't want it more than they do, right? I mean, if I'm your boss, if I'm your manager, and you're not hitting your goals, and we're talking about different ideas or things you can do.
That wouldn't happen, Katey.
Okay, I know, I'm way mean. Like, no. So she's way too direct. I am not for everybody.
No, me not hitting my goals.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right, fine. Yeah, all right. So, but if you were not hitting your goals, or not in the time that you wanted to hit them, and we're coaching with you, and you're fighting me on every single step of the way, okay. I'm hitting my goals. You hitting your goals has little to no effect on my life, right? Now, it might, obviously, if you're running a branch, and there is some financial impact for me. There is some, hey, one of your top people is not producing, that there is going to be some reflection on me, but I can replace you. I can recruit somebody else. I can make the shift if I need to, but you achieving your goals has got to matter to you, not me.
I got a quote right here. This was on Facebook.
Okay.
It's a baseball website, and it's to the son, and it's the parent, and it says, "Son, we can't want it more than you. We will always be here to support you, give you advice, hopefully steer you in the right direction. But in the end, it's on you. Your level of self-motivation will show your real passion and desire. We love you, but we can't do it for you." I mean, that's business, that's life, that's athletics. It's everything.
Yep, I tell it to my kids all the time. Like I will match your level of commitment. I will never exceed it. And so if your commitment level drops, so will mine. Right? Because I got my own dreams and things and goals that I'm working on for me. Like I don't have the energy to be working on your dreams. Like I will drive you where you need to go. I will pay for your 80,000 tournaments, right? I've been keeping score at ball games for, how old am I? Way long. At over 30 years. I thought it was a good way to meet boys, was to sit in the dugout and keep score, be the scorekeeper for the baseball team. You know how fast you get into the friend zone doing that?
Katey's one of the guys.
Totally. Been that way my whole life. So,
Well, and I think this is something being lost is you got to follow through with your commitments. So you might be really hot on idea, really motivated, but halfway through you lose that motivation. That doesn't mean you just bail, right? Like if I'm going to set a goal of I want to double my production this year, and then halfway through I realize that it's not that important to me, I just shouldn't bail. Just like if I'm a kid and I start playing baseball because I think it's really cool, I get halfway through the season, I just can't bail on my team just because I
Correct.
don't like it anymore. So there's that balance.
Do I have permission to challenge your thinking?
Please
on
do.
that?
That's why I led with an opinion.
So it's if you make a commitment to a team, you're making it's a team thing. I'm gonna work through the end of the season. At the end of the season, I go, hey, maybe I'm hanging up my cleats. This is not my gift, or I don't love it. I think if it's a goal for you, like I want to double my production, and we talk about work-life balance. We talk about, wow, what it takes for me to double my business this year is a ridiculous amount of energy and way more than I thought. I'm good if I increase my business by 1.5 times of what I did last year, and I can dial back the number of hours that I'm working so I can go to the kids' sporting events, or I can take a Sunday off and just chill on the couch with my daughter. Like you're allowed to adjust the sales. Now, if you have set up you run a team goal, and there's incentives based on the team, and this is what we're going to do, and these are the incentives that put in place for everybody, and then you go, just kidding. That's a different conversation. You've made a commitment to a team.
Sure.
Now, it could be you have a commitment to the team to say, hey, this run rate's killing me. Is it killing anybody else? Right? And have that conversation.
So what was your one-liner? Does the audio meet the
Match the video?
Match the video?
Yes.
I think that's very true when you're talking about your goal, though. If you're going to say it,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you're going to flake because the audio doesn't match the video, those have to still go hand in hand.
You still need to change the audio piece. Right.
You can't wuss out just because you're like, it's not as if it's the market's fault, or like,
Right,
are you following through on the steps that you've put in place to reach that goal? And if you've only done one of the 5 things that it takes to get there, well, then you're just flat out failing.
Right. Well, and I think you had said to me when we talked on the phone a couple weeks ago about how, and yes, I'm doing a HomeBot plug right now, but you said HomeBot's on my list of things I want to get done, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, and I'm going to do it. And so it was that whole, like, I've got my list, but where is that commitment to putting things in place like a HomeBot or other tools that you've got from Dave Savage, or you've got from other podcasts, or from the High Trust Academy or Mastermind, or whatever you like? Okay, I've made my list, but where's the commitment to it? And if it's not me, who am I delegating that to get it done? Because those things can, the audio match and the video, like, okay, man, this run rate's killing me, but if I put some of these other technology tools in place, that's going to help me get done in a shorter amount of time, or a more efficient amount of time. Like making my calls, following up with somebody who's getting a HomeBot digest every week or every month is a lot easier than just making these kind of random cold, doing your annual mortgage review.
And maybe that's why coaching's been so good for me, and because I'll get an idea in my head and I have a hard time getting away from that idea, or abandoning it or getting input for others. So having somebody that I can trust that says, all right, let's maybe put this on hold for a little bit, or
No, Cody.
take a couple of days off, of this and work on this list. I mean, to me, that's huge because I can get so focused on one thing and then get halfway through and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been focused on this so much, or maybe I should have had more input. We missed a great transition, so I'm going to go back to it. You said own it. Tell me what it's like to work with Jocko.
Well, I didn't directly. I mean, I worked with him as part of the training.
Because we talked
piece.
briefly before the podcast.
Yeah. So Jocko and I both worked at Prospect Mortgage together. He was what was like the director of training, I believe, when he and I first started working together. I met Jocko actually before I even came to work in the mortgage industry. I think I mentioned to you guys that I was the second speaker after Jocko. It was brutal. Brutal. It was the first time I'd met him, and just one of the greatest humans on the planet. But talk about a guy who's disciplined. Like, if nothing else, what you get from Jocko is discipline, and that discipline equals freedom is one of his mantras. And that was partly why he was head of training, is he said, okay, I was a real estate agent, a leader in my community. I was, speaking regionally at that point, had done some national speaking. And they had brought me in to come manage some of the in-house relationships. So on the real estate side, you can make a flyer and nobody from compliance has to look at it. You can put together a training program and nobody cares, right? And so that was part of it, is like, you need to send me everything that you're teaching out there under the name of a mortgage company, because there's legal ramifications that we need to pay attention to as far as compliance and things like that. And I was like, okay, cool. So I start sending him all of my training stuff. And then it was like, okay, what's this about? What's this about? What's this about? So that we could have an approval on some of the trainings that I was doing, and making sure.
And you're like, just approve it, please.
Just pretty much, yeah, please, yeah. So yeah, my thing with Jocko is when I see him is, and I don't see him as much obviously anymore, was to make him laugh, because Jocko laughing is the best.
Could you imagine having Jocko as a compliance officer?
I was just going to say,
wasn't quite that bad, but yeah.
I was just going to say, I have 3 photos with Jocko from the 3 different times I've met him, and I mean, he couldn't be any more stoic in any 3 photos, because that's just him.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. So I say, so Jocko once spoke about, he's disciplined on his eating, right? And so he's a paleo guy, and he talked about the paleo diet and how he eats, and he said it's 80-20 rule, and if you're doing that and talking about paleo, so. There was a lunch buffet, and both sides of the buffet, and I'm on one side and Jocko's directly across from me, and I was like, oh, awesome. So I say to him, I go, oh, great. So you're going to look at my plate. Now I'm going to get judged on what I put on my plate. And so he starts, and he laughed, right? And then, I said, so Jocko, let me get this straight. Paleo diet. I'm like, caveman stuff. And he's like, yeah. And I go, so life expectancy, 27? Like, that's what we're working on here? Right. and again, I got him to laugh. So I was like, I got 2 laughs. I'm like, yes. So that was always my thing. I always laugh when I hear about the paleo diet, the caveman diet, but and I intellectually get it. I just like to make little pot shots. So
we live in such a cool time where 2 goofy mortgage guys can do this, where you could have somebody like Jocko film a 5-minute video on being good and what it means to be good, and he can impact a country. He can impact hundreds of thousands of
So excited
people.
for him. It's just awesome. Yeah. Awesome human. Awesome human.
I mean, I don't know anybody that hasn't seen that video, and the people that I know that seen it watch it all the time. And Ryan and I put it on once in a while, just to get through the whatever you're working on.
Yeah, one of our former guests, Eric Post, he just posted it yesterday. So
it's such a cool time to be an entrepreneur or be in business, because of the resources we have. From my phone, I can get Jocko Willick video telling me what good means. So, all right, we got to wrap up.
Okay.
How can people get a hold of you? How can they learn more about HomeBot?
Okay. HomeBot, the best way to learn about HomeBot is go to homebot.ai, and AI stands for artificial intelligence, homebot.ai. There's a recorded webinar on there, lots and lots of cool videos. I will say this to loan officers. I'm speaking in the to the camera right now. If you are an in-house loan officer, if you are a loan officer that is inside of a real estate office, you have a desk in there, you have to take a serious look at HomeBot. It is the single best tool I have ever seen for in-house relationships. And if you want to ask me some best practices, I've got a webinar around that. It's called How to Speak Realtor. Happy to send that to anybody who wants to see how to leverage HomeBot as an in-house loan officer. It is incredible. Homebot.ai. You can Google my name, Katey Dallosto, or Capiche Consulting. You can find me there. What are you looking at, Ryan?
I'm gonna go pull up this screenshot for your consulting business.
Can I ask you a question? Can I interrupt your plug and ask you a question?
Sure.
Are there statistics out yet that show how much loan officers have increased their business from their database?
Oh, I mean,
using HomeBot?
the simple ones, I'm sure there are. I have to get them. I'm not a numbers person, so my sister and my dad were math majors. We're seeing anecdotally is that when a loan officer uploads about 250 to 300 past clients, they're getting a loan in 45 days. It literally makes the phone ring. They might like how to make the phone ring. I used to say dial it out first. Now I'm saying and get HomeBot. Because people call, even if they call to say, hey, I got this HomeBot thing and it says my value is off on my house. Cool. They called you, right? And then you can go in and change the value. So one of the things that people complain about with other value models is it's just, you can't change it. With HomeBot, you can change it. You as the mortgage professional, real estate professional, you can go in and change the value because who's the expert? I mean, our logo looks like Rosie from the Jetsons, right? So who's a better knowledgeable about the market? You, the real estate mortgage professional, or an algorithm, right? So the clients call, you now have an opportunity to talk to them about their home and their value and equity, and it's awesome.
Well, I can vouch from conversations with close friends that are in the industry that use HomeBot, and they were pretty amazed about how their phone started ringing from their database. And that's the most overlooked thing. Is the most valuable thing we have is our database. And a good loan officer should be getting the majority of their business from their database.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a great tool to go out and help with your realtors too, who need the same help. They need help reaching out to their database. So you can take this HomeBot tool out to them and say, hey, this is making my phone ring. I care about you and your business. Let's see, getting your phone to ring too.
Fortune Cookie Leadership, available on Amazon. Check it out.
I can also
be jealous because I have a signed copy.
You do have a signed copy. If somebody wants a signed copy, I have cases in my office that I need to sell at some point. So.
Well, Katey, I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Totally jacked on coffee and motivation. So thank you so much for coming on and making the trip up here. And,
my pleasure.
You always have a welcome seat on our
always.
podcast.
Look out and show up one of these days. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, everybody. We will catch you next time.
All right. Later.
Later. Thank you.